name is Cameron Barsanti, CEO and founder of StorageLife. I have a community of self-storage investors across the country. We're finding, funding, and operating self-storage together. We also teach you how to do it. If you want to know more, go to storagelife.com. Cool. So today, we're going to dive in on all the lessons learned of a facility we purchased over 4.5 years ago. We bought it for $335,000. It's worth about $2.5 million now. We have another 20,000 square feet to convert, which would obviously add even more value to it. But there's much more important lessons than just what we've learned. It's also about all the different things we've been able to do with this asset, including taking out a couple of different second notes to buy additional storage facilities with no money. But let's start from the top. One thing I want to mention is that what I found, we purchased 17 facilities now. That does not include at least 10 facilities we've wholesaled, but every conversation opens up an opportunity. And really, my job as a self-storage investor and a hunter is to find off-market discounted opportunity and build relationships with sellers. That is also your job. Everybody knows each other and people are more than happy to help. In addition to that, self-storage, as we always talk about, it's not multifamily, it's not single family. You can't rely on brokers and wholesalers to bring you deals. There's just not enough of them. And so while all you guys out there are getting great education because you need all that information, there's nothing like actually doing what moves the needle forward the most. And what that is actually hunting for deals, finding opportunity. Your lifeline hinges upon your ability to find opportunity in self-storage. That's it. It's that simple. So this deal was found off market. We were cold calling, looking for opportunity. Actually, I was looking for multifamily at the time. It was a long conversations that I was talking to a seller that owned condos, and then she sent me to a bank, and then the bank had REO property. It was a crazy wild goose chase, but it happened because I bought a course online, helping me find off-market opportunity. That course taught me how to buy a list, and I was pounding the pavement first and foremost. Most importantly, I was pounding the pavement. Conversations equal opportunity. All these different conversations we have with sellers and other people eventually will lead to opportunity. It's happened time and time and time again in our career. And so if you can listen, if you can converse, and if you can connect, I promise you will find opportunity, especially if you're consistent. That's your job, right? Okay, so we bought this. It was 50,000 square feet of warehouse. It was 10,000 of it was converted into climate controlled storage. The rest of it was empty space. COVID had hit not too long ago. The property had just appraised for $900,000. We made an offer for $325,000. The broker also happened to be part of the bank board. I think they came back at like $435, and then we countered again at $335. We came up $10,000. The lesson number one: don't be pressured just because somebody comes back at a higher number. Doesn't mean you have to go to a higher number. You just never know. And we knew we were there in somewhat of a distressed situation. Another lesson on this deal was this deal was listed on market. However, it was only a local listing, so nobody could find it. We found it because we were cold calling, searching off market, right? So there's opportunity when brokers that are not self-storage brokers list either, it's the MLS or something like that, but it's not hitting LoopNet, it's not hitting Crexy, it's a bad listing. They don't know what the property's worth, right? That's what this opportunity was in this scenario, even though we didn't stumble upon it on the market. Okay, and so we weren't bullied by them even countering higher. We're like, look, we're gonna come up $10,000, and then we're walking, and it's a take it or leave it, and they took it. So we bought this deal for $335,000, 50,000 square feet, over 6 acres. Obviously, it was a great deal. This was actually our first facility, and we were intimidated by a few reasons. One big reason was it was a massive property, and then the population of the place was about 24,000. The other big deal is the supply index was really high of self-storage. But what we learned during due diligence was that everybody was completely full to the brim. In addition to that, there was the Holloman Air Force Base, a very, very, very important base, as we learned. And I love military bases now. That was my first, but we have now quite a few properties in military areas. Now, all military bases are not created equal. If you're going into an area that has a military base, be sure you vet that base and figure out and try and find how important it actually is. And is there a chance it may actually get shut down? You never know. But if that does, obviously it would have a massive impact. We found Holloman Air Force Base is an extraordinarily important base for our country, which made us feel very confident in the longevity of that base. So we not only bought this property as first timers, we decided to expand. We ordered the steel prior to even closing. A month or two later, we expanded 10,000 square feet. COVID helped us out extraordinarily. And so we actually filled that up pretty quickly. While we were filling up, I think we hit about 80%. We're like, wow, the demand's crazy. Let's fill up again. So we did. We filled up again. And then all of a sudden we had 30,000 square feet of climate controlled facility. That facility, when we took over, was making about 3,000 a month. It makes around 23,000 a month currently. So it was a huge win for us. Now, a few things that we've learned and navigated with this facility is we didn't know what we were doing. So the first thing I actually did when I was under contract was I hired a storage coach. He was a coach from mine for over 4 years. As you know, I'm a huge fan of coaches. I've always had business coaches and real estate coaches since the beginning of my journey. It's the only reason we've been able to expedite our career. So I hired a coach. He taught me what to do. I learned self-storage in and out, and then we started running the facility. Another thing that we did was we leaned on, again, conversations equal opportunity. Well, I actually got the number of the seller that was in a foreclosure. This was a foreclosure I forgot to mention. And I got a hold of that seller, and I knew it was going to potentially be like, I didn't know if he was going to be upset or not, but he was actually very helpful. He was upset and bummed out that he had lost this opportunity along with other properties, but he was willing to help. So he connected us to all these local contractors, electricians, HVAC, the roofer, the dirt work guy, and even our local bank knew a couple of contractors they referred us to. So now one thing to point out is this was a smaller area. And so the neat thing about smaller areas is we were able to just get so much information by talking to so many different people within the community, especially going all the way back to the seller. One point I'm going to make is when you guys go buy your facilities and you're looking for boots on the ground, I'm going to give you 2 tips. A lot of times that boots on the ground can actually be somebody who's handy, and a lot of times it's one of your tenants. It's a tenant that's been in there for a long time and loves the property, and so they want to keep the property looking good for you, and they've been there for a long time. They know the lay of the land. That's a good boots on the ground. Tip 2 would be that in all your contractors, your subcontractors you're talking to, be your asphalt, your roof guy, your paint guy, whoever they are, your electrician, find somebody that you quickly understand that they've been around for a long time. Hey, yeah, I've been working in this community for 30 something years, You like them, even if it's just over the phone and you've never met him. Well, then you lean on that contractor, subcontractor for other referral. You find one good contractor, subcontractor, and then they can open up other referrals for you and potentially be your boots on the ground. You only need one great person to be your boots on the ground. As you know, the majority of our facilities are remote managed, including this one, which goes to my next little fun fact about the deal. I had a guy that called. At the time, I was answering the phone. It was the first facility. It was my baby. My wife was still working. We were trying to replace her W-2 income. Every dollar meant a lot to us. And so I learned a ton answering the phones. I answered 7 days a week, gave me a huge advantage. I learned how to give rent incentives, incentivize the people to rent on the phone, to leave good reviews, all that important stuff. Also, I was introduced and met really our entire tenant base. So I knew everybody. That also went even deeper. And then I started learning potential contractors and help through the tenant base. I also met a guy who wanted to rent a unit, as a fun fact, a little studio to play guitar. What we did instead is we gave him the office for free, and he became our on-site manager. He's been there for over 4.5 years. We only pay him a few $100 a month. It's gone up. He's just really happy to have a free space. He's there every day. Again, really leaning into our conversations that have created this opportunity within this local community. Our expense ratio on that facility is roughly 22%. So as we're underwriting, typically around 35%. Some operators I know are running closer to 40%. Obviously, it depends on property taxes and insurance, but this is 22%. Our portfolio average is around 25%. We found ways to really leverage great boots on the ground, remote manage, cut a lot of costs. Some of the bigger operators are scared to do. This is 30,000 square feet. We have nobody there. Okay, so lots of local leaning on, a couple of expansions. We did great. And then what happened years later, that property grew in equity significantly, right? And so one thing I want to point out is everybody typically when they're starting out wants to replace income, and you're typically replacing your W-2 income and or your spouse's W-2 income. So everybody's really fixated on, I need to make X amount a month in order to retire. Now, that's a great starting point. What I want to point out though is as your journey continues and you start buying properties, good news and bad news. Bad news is most of the time that cash flow is just not going to equal what you thought it would or what you need it to be. The good news is what will happen is if you are smart and you're buying good properties and you know how to analyze and you're careful and conservative and you're buying in the right places and the right deals, your equity is going to start to grow significantly. And that equity is actually what's going to give you the confidence, especially ready to retire or to do this full time. Because you buy a property and a year later, all of a sudden, maybe there's $500,000 of equity in that property. And then all of a sudden you have another property and there's 300 grand. And then maybe you get a great deal like we have, and all of a sudden there's like 2 million of equity in that property. And then there's a little bit of cash flow. That cash flow we're using for maybe other purchases, stuff like that. So it's not like it's going into our bank account. But then all of a sudden in your career, you're going to be like, holy crap, I have a couple $1,000,000 in equity in these deals. Or, hey, I have one deal that has 2 million in equity or $1 million. And if I had to fire sell that, I know I'd net out my portion of like 500K. Honey, guess what? I think we're good to do this full time. We've gotten the hang of it. We've learned. Guys, every deal you buy has so many invaluable lessons that are going to stick with you forever. They're going to help you understand markets more, help you understand operations more, help you understand what tenants actually want, how to actually rent units like a champ, how to outperform even REITs and big operators, where to look next, right? Every time you buy a deal, you learn so much. So again, getting good at hunting, finding deep discounted property, and allowing those properties to not only make you money, but to teach you everything you'll need to know. Okay, so going back to this deal, so now we have a lot of equity in this deal. Again, we bought it through 335. We've been paying down our debt. And so we bought a property last year in California. I talked about it, I think last week. That property was 2.4 million. We went to our banker, who's now, I'd consider her a friend. She's been great. They've lent on a lot of our facilities. And so we took out a second note on that property. What did that look like? It was basically a note that we were going to pay interest only for 12 months. And that second note bought us California. So we actually bought California, even though it was 2.4, we bought it with no money because the down payment was covered by the note. And then there was a partner that had a little small percentage who found the deal and he put some money in. So I was able to buy that property with zero of my own money. And then we sold that a year later for over $4 million. So technically the $4.1 million profit was made from this tiny purchase of $335,000. Why is this so important? Because this is your career. This is your journey. Yes, it is a long game. You have to start playing that game. You have to start playing. The sooner you start playing it, the quicker you're going to start building this long-term wealth, you guys. Waiting and waiting and waiting will kill you. And so the right information, the right community, the right coach, that stuff is so important because once you start getting in, you're starting to plant these seeds, right? That are going to have long-term results. And this is your freedom we're talking about. And so this tiny purchase that my wife and I were terrified of making 17 facilities ago, bought this property, made us some great money, learned a ton. And now we just closed last week on another property, 50,000 square feet in Oklahoma City. I put zero of my own money in. Why? Because I then went back, we had paid off that second note and I took another second note out. So then my partner and I bought this with zero money. So this one tiny purchase has grown, right? It's evolved. Your journey will evolve. You staring at your first deal and trying to figure out how much money it's going to make you and what that's actually going to, it's not what you think. It's a stepping stone to a much larger picture. And that's you and your financial freedom. I don't syndicate so far. I've only syndicated one deal with my friend AJ, but the rest of the deals I've done putting my own money in. I didn't have it, but somehow we borrowed money, private money, and then sold a few, had a good run, and we were able to fund these other deals. Because of that, I have large ownership percentages in these deals, typically 40 to 50%. Because of that, we've been able to grow quickly and my equity has been able to grow quickly and I've been able to leverage other properties and make large advancements. So my point of saying all this is even though syndication is a great tool and very important, if you can find ways to use your own money, you're having a much larger equity stake in deals. And if that deal turns out to be a home run, it can literally be a life changer. On top of it, the last point I'm going to make is that also your cash flow is very significant. A lot of the syndicators I know that are doing like hundreds of millions and all their cash flow actually is not great because they're paying investors back. It's taking a lot of time. Great deals where you're JVing with your buddies, you're putting a lot of skin in the game and you're making lots of profit will move the needle forward faster. Guys, thanks for jumping on. Awesome guys. Good luck out there. Peace.